Taking off the gloves, I've had enough, it's in my blood. I was born for this.
Welcome to the show, guys. Joseph Robert Camo, the fantasy football counselor. In this video, we're going to talk about Fantasy Football Sleepers 2021. I'm going to give you guys some names. Open discussion here. I'm going to pull up a list of the consensus rankings, some players from last year and their rankings that I think are sleepers. I'm going to discuss and have an open discussion with you on some top sleepers you may want to consider for Fantasy Football 2021. First, early look and discussion. This is very important because sleepers and value plays in your drafts can really make and break your year. Last year, we saw it. We saw Justin Jefferson going pretty much undrafted. I was recommending him in the 7th round. We saw Claypool and Deontay Johnson completely being ignored off the radar, okay? We see guys that are overinflated because of copy-paste rankings from last year. They say, hey, these guys finished on top last year. They tell you to draft them again in that same order. That has to end. So the important thing with sleepers is that that's going to give you guys some insight on to get some value plays, because these guys people are sleeping on them. You can get them, ahead of other people and get that advantage. So sleepers are very important when it comes to Fantasy Football 2021 and beyond, okay? So we're going to talk about that here today. Before we get into that, guys, make sure you guys, of course, get the 16-round draft solution. I've linked it here below. It's really going to help you guys dominate your league. You can pre-order for the lowest price of the season. I've linked it below, guys, or head on over to thefantasyfootballcounselor.com. It's right on the homepage. Get it, guys. This crushes cheat sheets and draft kits and outdated magazines and all of the mainstream analysts. They have no idea what hit them. This is the game changer. This is the real deal. 16 rounds, get it below. And of course, Manscapecom. Get yourself a Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer. Amazing product. Fit and finish is phenomenal here. You got a light you can navigate around your sensitive areas and not worry about getting nicks and cuts. So it's really, really an awesome product that I like to use on the body grooming. As you know, I'm a hairy animal sometimes, so I gotta, sometimes meaning like I always groom, so I keep not so hairy, but it's really gonna help you guys shave in those sensitive areas, particularly, and then not worry about the cuts. They've also got some other amazing products, including a weed whacker for your nose. You can get that nose hair out. Manscaped.com. Make sure you guys use promo code SHOWERLION. That's going to help you guys save 20% on your purchase, and you're going to be very happy with your product. Manscaped.com, promo code SHOWERLION. All right. So I'm going to dive into these sleepers here. Let's go talk about it. Guys that I think are sleepers. This is kind of just an open discussion here. And I want you guys to interact. So in the comments below, let me know what you think. And I've got the consensus rankings pulled up. And a lot of people ask me, Joe, where do you get the consensus rankings from? I'm not really going to give anybody a plug, but if you just Google consensus consensus rankings, you'll probably find them. So yeah, this is definitely not a place where you want to get fantasy football advice at all. It's very generic. It's very cookie cutter, but this is what's going out to the mainstream people. This is what people see. And this is what people, rank and draft based upon, which is pretty sad. We're going to change that this year. I promise you that. All right, so let's keep going here. Let's go with a sleeper. Let's start off here. David Montgomery, currently sitting as a tier 4, guys. 19th overall amongst running backs in the rankings. Now, this is standard, so I will filter by PPR. Still 19 right now. David Montgomery, he is a sleeper that I think a lot of people will still be sleeping on. Now, you're saying, well, Joe, don't they copy and paste? They do, but they kind of favor players that they like. We saw this with Odell Beckham Jr. 3 years in a row, they had him in the first round, even though he was busting and getting injured. Last year, they had him in the 3rd round ADP. They were suggesting mock drafts were having Odell come off in the 3rd round, even knowing that he busted 3 years in a row. And it's just like, there's players they favor. Yes, it's copy and paste, but there's players they favor. There's players they just don't like, right? It's not as hyped of a player, not as marketable as a player, not as such a popular opinion. So David Montgomery did actually finish 4th. Now, I'm assuming he's sitting 19th on the consensus is because he had some years where he didn't do as well. And assuming Tariq Cohen may be coming back, we don't know. But all we do know right now is that he did finish 4th. And what I do like about him is the attempts and the volume. So he was getting a lot of attempts. When you look at him, 247, that's a floor, I think. I still think he's got more room to grow. They finally realized that he is the guy. He averaged 4.3 yards per carry, had over 1,000 yards, 1,070 yards. And 8 touchdowns. So he's going to get the goal line work. He's going to be involved a little bit in the receiving game. He had 54 receptions, 438 yards, and 2 touchdowns, which is good. So he's going to get involved. He can catch. He can catch actually better than Tariq Cohen, believe it or not. So I really like David Montgomery this year, and I think he's a sleeper. So again, people are going to be sleeping on him. Again, he's sitting at 19th on the consensus rankings, which is pretty crazy. and you're probably going to get him for good value. Let's go through some other sleepers here, and it's not necessarily going to be the running back position. I'm just having an open discussion overall, okay? So here's a quarterback that I think that people are going to definitely be sleeping on that I think has got a ton of value, and people are going to be like, oh, you know what? I don't know. Dak Prescott. Listen, he's sitting 6th. So you're saying, well, Joe, they're not really sleeping on him. This guy was a top 3 quarterback when healthy, but I still think his ADP is going to fall. I still think you can get him after the 3rd or 4th round. Now, he is currently sitting ahead of Aaron Rodgers, so I see they're trying to be creative here. But I do like him, and I still think a lot of people are going to be sleeping on him because he was injured. The recency bias is going to kick in. So it doesn't necessarily mean by the rankings here, but it just means what your league mates are going to do. They're probably going to forget about Dak Prescott. Now, he's got a lot of weapons. I don't know who's going to return or what additions they're going to have, but he's got great receivers as of the time of this recording, right? Not great, but really above par receivers when you include Lamb, Gallup, Amari, all good receivers. And they've got a good O-line. He's going to come back, and he's hungry for a contract. He's hungry for a deal. He's hungry to get finally paid the mega contract that he feels he deserves. He wants to show the team. He wants to show the world. He wants to show the NFL that he is the guy. So I think Dak Prescott will be slept on right now. Again, not so much in the rankings. He's sitting 6th. Obviously not as high as your Pat Mahomes, your Josh Allen, your Kyler Murray, guys like that, Lamar Jackson's. But I think Dak Prescott's going to be slept on, okay? Another one, I'm just looking here, is Justin Herbert, sitting 9th on the consensus rankings. Now, we see this every single year, guys. When you're doing your fantasy football draft, you see your top-tier quarterbacks, your Mahomes and your Lamar come off in the 2nd or 3rd round. I said, do not do that. Do not draft quarterbacks in the 2nd round. You don't want to invest too early of a pick, okay? So what you got to do here is look for the value. You got to get the consistent players with upside and the value, the 4th round, 5th round, okay? And I talk about that, my Sneaky 7 formula. I talk about that in my 16-round draft solution where I introduce the Sneaky 7 formula where it tells you where to draft that quarterback, okay? I'm looking at Herbert, and I think he's going to be value. I think he's good talent. I think he only gets better. He had a good year last year. I think it only gets better. Justin Herbert is the real deal, and I think people are going to be sleeping on him as well. So Herbert, Dak Prescott, I think great quarterbacks that are going to be slept on. Now, Matt Ryan, I think, he's had some good years. I don't know if the best is behind him now, his best performance, but I still think there's still some juice left in the tank, and he has been consistent. He just had a bad year. I'm going to be watching that situation. I'm going to watch the O-line and see which running back they bring in. I don't think Gurley's the solution there, but Matt Ryan's a guy that you definitely want to consider as a backup quarterback with that top 10 potential if Julio comes back. Julio's looking for a redemption year as well. So I'm looking at some sleepers here already, and I think Matt Ryan could be a good backup. Again, you're going to get him for amazing value as a backup quarterback, but I like to anchor with maybe a Dak or a Justin Herbert right there, okay? And we talk about this all in the 16-round draft, so you can get that at thefantasyfootballcouncil.com. First release of that is in April after the draft, because that's when I know what the ADPs look like, what the teams look like, but you can pre-order for the lowest price right now. All right, so let's just keep looking. Let's keep talking. Let's go wide receivers here. Let's take a look at some sleepers. I see Jefferson sitting at 12th in PPR. Now, a lot of people are going to be sleeping on the wide receiver one on that team, which was Thielen. Now, I was a Jefferson fan. I still think he's the better talent and a guy that I got in the 7th round, like I said. But Thielen's a guy I think you can get later. Now, if you load up on running backs early, the first 3 rounds, and you see Jefferson gone, Thielen is not such a bad option. He's sitting 19th amongst wide receivers right now. Not bad. Deontay Johnson's being slept on, 22nd. This guy was the target leader on the Steelers. Again, just having an open discussion here with you guys, having a quick first look here. T. Higgins, he's going to take a step up. If Burrow comes back healthy, which I think he does, Higgins is a guy that I think a lot of people will be sleeping on. Claypool as well, especially if there's talk of Juju being shipped off. Claypool and Deontay, man, the sky's the limit with those guys. There's a ton of sleepers, and there's a ton of value at wide receiver that people are going to be sleeping on. Completely sleeping on, and it's just going to be like, oh my God, I wasted a 2nd-round pick or a 1st-round pick on Devontae Adams. Great player, but you got to understand, Adams had like 18 touchdowns or something ridiculous, and we had an MVP year with Aaron Rodgers. That's only going to go down. So am I investing a 1st-round pick on Adams? I love him. He might be a good return on investment. I think the talent is great. But, it's a bit of a reach to go for him in the first round. Again, where you could load up on a running back, okay? So when you look at wide receivers, there's a ton of sleepers at wide receiver. This is why, again, I say implement the robust RB strategy. With tight ends, looking at the early rankings here, I mean, you see TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, guys that were 10th round or above picks or going undrafted are now in the top 5, 6. So again, the mainstream Sheeps is jumping on that trend. Kelsey obviously sitting at number 1, not a sleeper, but you're going to see this. Tonyan, 11th amongst tight ends. With tight ends, as long as I get my 10 points, I'm good. With tight ends, I don't really focus so much on sleepers. I just want to get a tight end that gets me around the 10 points, and I'd be a happy guy. Okay, so again, I'm looking at this. So just to recap here, quarterbacks, I think people are going to sleep on Herbert because they're going to go for the Josh Allens of the world, the Pat Mahomes. Josh Allen, the guy that I was getting in the 10th round a year or two ago that was giving me a great return on investment while people are focused on Baker Mayfields of the world. And that's what we do. We think outside the box. Now, there is a couple of deeper sleepers, maybe a Jalen Hurts and a Tua, guys like that, maybe Trevor Lawrence, depending on where he lands, but we still don't know. Again, this has to kind of fizzle out after the draft. We're going to have a better feel and a better idea, but I think there's some upside here with some of these players, some of these guys I mentioned, like the Trevor Lawrences of the world. We're going to have to see where they land, okay? So, I mean, again, early discussion right now, guys, but I had to do an episode just to kind of, get you guys in that gear, start thinking about sleepers, and understand that you can get value in your drafts without having to spend an early pick on a guy that just recently did good. Does that make sense? So last year we saw it. Everybody invested early picks in Kenyon Drake, Austin Eckler, right? Guys like Lamar Jackson, second round. Pat Mahomes, second. I mean, Pat Mahomes was good, but, Lamar Jackson, like, were they worth second round picks, right? When you get other players, guys like Godwin, who was coming off a 2019 year, people invested him in the second round, said, stay away from Godwin. Mike Evans, stay away. Evans finished 11th amongst wide receivers at PPR. Godwin way outside of that. So all these guys that people say are going to be in the top 10 don't necessarily finish in the top 10. It's up to you and up to me, my 16-round draft solution, to make that discovery and to help you guys crush your leagues, okay? So Fantasy Football Sleepers 2021, early discussion. There is deeper sleepers. That's why you got to subscribe. We're going to dive more into this. So we're going to get more into this, obviously, in more detail as we get closer to the season, as we know what happens in free agency and the NFL draft. But as of right now, this is just a quick early look. And these aren't even deep sleepers, but they're sleepers that you can get for good value that could give you top 3, top 5 potential, okay? All right, guys, I'm out. Make sure you guys subscribe and leave a comment below. What sleepers you like this year? Love to hear your feedback and get in the 16-round draft solution, guys. I am out.